Some people do. Good morning, everyone. We are still waiting for people to arrive so that it's worthwhile to have a meeting. So I'm going to wait another 5 minutes or so to see if we can't get enough people in order to have a meaningful meeting. Thank you.
Here.
Good morning again, everyone. So if you haven't already, please check the sign-in sheet and check your contact information. We want to make sure that we're sending emails and communications to the appropriate address. Woohoo! Yeah, Jack is a delegate. Mr. Carr, we could not start until you were in the room, so thank you. Thank you. Dana's here. Yeah. I saw that. I don't think we quite have a quorum, but I am going to call the meeting to order so that we can... The agenda packets, the entire packet of information is along the front counter, so if you haven't gotten a set, there are resolutions that are attached in the minutes. So 2 tasks. One is to sign in, and the other is to grab a packet of information. It's the same thing. A complete packet is in a pile. You're welcome. Thank you. Great. So let me call the meeting to order. I'm Debbie Skopczynski, president of APAB. I'm joined at the front of the room, starting all the way to my left, with Jim Martin, who is our zoning and land use chair as well as parliamentarian, Melissa Moore, who is our corresponding secretary at recording secretary. Whoops, sorry. Also at front is Ann Phillips, our finance secretary, Eunice Glover, who is our second vice president, and all the way over to the right, Daniel Vasquez, who is acting as planner for us today. I know many of you have been to other APAB meetings, but I just want to remind you that APAB is an official city board and a representative body of the 25 NPUs, with each NPU having a single vote. Each NPU chair must formally notify the Department of City Planning and APAB of their official delegate and alternate, and only these delegates or alternates may vote, and each NPU only gets 1 vote, as I said earlier. If you've been selected or elected a delegate and your name was not on the sign-in sheet, it means that your NPU chair did not make that notification. And we are still trying to get our list updated. If you believe that there's an error, please contact the new Assistant Director Interim, Leah LaRue, or Daniel Vasquez so that we can update our list. We will try and keep to our 2-hour time frame, and I am going to be recognizing only delegates and alternates to speak throughout much of the meeting. We do have time set aside for others to speak during public comment. If you wish to speak, please come to the podium and identify yourself by name and NPU. And if you're a delegate or alternate, comments may be made from the floor, will not be picked up from Channel 26. So we've got to keep, in order for this meeting to be recorded, we need to speak in a mic. Please keep all comments germane to the topic being addressed and respectful of everyone in the room. And I'm going to be watching time, and so if some of the discussions become too long, that may use the option of cutting that discussion off so that we can get through our entire agenda, including public comment. I'm going to ask the recording secretary to go through the roll call, see if we've got a quorum.
Great. If you hear your name, please say you are here as loudly and as clearly as possible. Thank you. NPU A, Brinkley Dickerson. NPU B, Richard Raw. The system is not going to work. It was a great idea that failed. Thank you. Dr. John Muzzy. NPU C, Zach Gober. NPU D, James Martin. Here. And Melissa Moore here. NPU E, Elizabeth Ward. Sean Green. NPU F, Debbie Skopczynski.
Here.
Sorry. I'm so sorry. NPU G, Ola Reynolds. Sonia Hodges, MPU H, Barbara Hubbard, Lena Reed Morrow, MPU I, Eunice Glover, here. And Jennifer Freeman, MPU J, Benjamin Dickerson, Al Bartel, MPU K, Lita Harmon, Drunell Thomas, MPU L, Courtney Waring, Jennifer McIntosh, MPU M, Rashid Muhammad, and Rebecca Rice, NPU N, Amy Stout, Catherine Woodling, NPU O, Carl Holt, Marcus Owens, NPU P, Rasheen Hunter, Hope Hoffman, NPU Q, Eric Toomer, David Katachu Smith, NPU R, Antonita Robinson, Donovan Dodds, NPU S, Chris Brown, Danielle Burrows, MPU T, Terry Ross, Con May Wan, MPU V, Columbus Ward, Stephanie Flowers, MPU W, Philippe Pelerin, Jack Grundler, MPU X, Michael Hopkins, Reuben Burney, MPU Y, Chris McCord, Gloria Hawkins, MPU Z, Ann Phillips, Sharita Grant.
Eric Toomer just walked in. Glad to see you.
Eric Toomer and, I'm sorry, who else? Just Rashid Muhammad. I'm sorry. I got Rashid. And I got Eric. Okay.
Yeah, Dana, I never heard back from Chris. I emailed him. Okay. Yeah, sorry, I I tried. Yeah, I emailed him, no response.
Yeah, I told him.
Yeah?
Somebody needs to show up.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think he comes in.
That's true. So, Madam President, we are at 11 NPUs. We do not have quorum.
Okay, so we're still missing 2 NPUs in order to have a quorum. In lieu of the lack of quorum, we are not able to conduct any business. Let's hope that the quorum does come for that. I want to skip then to board and task force reports. Is there anyone here that represents a board or task force that would like to speak? Yes. Sandra.
Good morning.
Morning.
You haven't heard from me in a while from Code Enforcement Commission, and that is because we have not met since before the Super Bowl. So hopefully we're back on schedule, and I have placed the printed report for the NPU chairs up front. Briefly, the City of Atlanta's Code Enforcement Commission met on May 9th in the Committee Room 2 of the City Hall. The meeting was chaired by Councilmember Shepard, and the following agenda items were discussed. A report of the code enforcement expenditures for 2019. As you know, a code enforcement training academy was held for 5 weekends at the Fire Training Center. There was $7,015 expended for 2,000 city services booklets, food for the Code Enforcement Academy, $2,011, and folders and notebooks, etc., for the participants, $50. Another item included Deputy Director Daphne Talley, noted that each department issuing code violations or tickets will now have to repurchase their individual ticket books. I apparently they were sharing books from each department because you have the police, you have municipal court, and you have public works. But they will now have to include in their budgets ticket books for them due to some state law that has been passed. So that was mentioned. And Deputy Talley asked that an amount be considered for the new budget. The new 2019 City Services and Code Enforcement Handbook is available online under the Keep America Beautiful tab. Now, you would think that that book should be under Code Enforcement, but there's not a hyperlink from the police department where Code Enforcement is to access that book. So you have to go to Public Works and click on Keep America Beautiful, and you can locate the handbook. However, I'm going to ask Councilmember Shepherd to see if they could add just a hyperlink under Code Enforcement. It makes sense, but that's the teacher in me, I'm sorry. But, you know, you look for Code Enforcement, you look for the police. Some of the highlights from the Community Service Division where Code Enforcement is located. In fiscal year 18, 13 vacancies were handled where inspections were down 4%. For fiscal year 19, they had 18 vacancies, and this is staff for under Code Enforcement. And inspections were up 1%. Demolitions were down 61%. And 5 NPUs averaged approximately 140 complaints per month. And these NPUs are I, S, V, X, and Z. There is 1 code enforcement officer per NPU. This data excludes re-inspections, court re-inspections, proactive inspections, details, and follow-up inspections. The accomplishments under code enforcement for FY18 included executing a citywide demolition and asbestos abatement contract. Demolition budget increased 50%. The largest demolition in the program's history was completed in September 2018, and these were the Bolton Road apartments at address 940, 950, and 1020 Bolton Road at a cost of $1.5 million. They have implemented civil proceedings related to business entities only to reduce the unserved citations, and there is a collaborative effort to strategically enforce code enforcement activities block by block. So that is my report.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Ms. Bush regarding the code enforcement?
I have a question. Madam
Yes.
Chair? Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Ms. Bush, those statistics that you just gave, particularly those about the 5 NPUs that had over 130 calls per month,
Yes.
are those statistics online yet, or how do I get a copy of it?
The major of over code enforcement, Mr. Mason, provided that information.
Okay, so we can maybe get it from him.
I can make a copy or scan it and send it to you, email or
Would you?
that way.
Yeah, would you do that for me?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anything else?
Are there any other questions? And you said that you do have copies of the report. Oh, okay, great.
You mean the report from Mason?
From that one,
Yes,
yeah.
ma'am.
Okay,
I only made copies for the NPUs.
okay. Great, thank you. Thank you. Are there...
I have just one comment. I think that maybe we should consider some type of resolution to have these deficits in code enforcement officers, these vacancies, to have Councilmember Shepherd and the powers that be that make the budget, because you have the police, you have Public Works that does code enforcement, to give that a little more attention, because and Atlanta is growing so fast that you really can't. You could, but you really can't keep up with all the changes going on and people making, the city making decisions. For instance, you used to put your yard trimmings out on the easement or whatever for pickup during your trash day, right? But now you have to schedule the bulk pickup. You just can't put it out, and that's in the handbook. But when you only train 50 people and you have 475,000 folk in the city of Atlanta, that information kind of gets lost. So it's items like that I think the citizens need more information about the code violations. And I'll use myself as an example. I live next door to a home that had we both had invasive plants. And I cleaned my side off, but the gentleman had no clue about he needed to do that. And I said, well, you're going to have to spend money. I'm warning you now, because I can send in a violation on you. Because, the wisteria and the ivy had just covered all the trees. So, on his side. And he admitted he was a New Yorker. He didn't know one plant from another. So, that's just a little aside.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Carr, unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to recognize you because you're no longer a delegate.
I had a question for
Oh, well, okay.
Ms. Bush.
I'm sorry.
I have two questions. I don't cheat.
Hey, can we ask the question so we can move on, please?
I sit in the back of the room and throw verbal grenades. Number one is, it's my understanding that code enforcement is only involved with private property as opposed to any public property. Question number two is, code enforcement by its very nature and its history is reactive and punitive. And I would like to know what programs are suggested and or legislated.
I didn't turn you off.
To make it more proactive, or just proactive, period.
I think that second question is probably going to take a very long answer.
I can't answer it at this time. I would prefer that he put it in writing, and I would consult with Councilman Shepherd and Lieutenant Mason.
Great, thank you.
Ruben Bernie, I'm a little bit confused about some of the information that was just given about the link on the Public Works site to the Atlanta Keep It Clean and Beautiful, because I just looked and I did not find it. Thank you. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, great, thank you. Anyone else representing a city board? Oh, did you want? Please introduce yourself.
Good morning. I'm Sherry Williams with the Atlanta Citizens Review Board, ACRB. And the update that I have for you today is, I'm sure many of you are aware that recently there have been several cases across the nation as well as Atlanta where police officers have been accused of various things, and they either were not wearing a body-worn camera, or they did not turn on their body-worn camera. So one of the things that that we have been doing as members of the ACRB is to ask Police Chief Shields if she would enforce a penalty for that. We even had a complaint filed against an officer twice where he would turn his body-worn camera off before he completed his investigation, and he would always say, oh, well, I got the pertinent stuff. So the penalty for that wasn't stiff enough. So obviously we do have some rogue officers, and that's why we have Atlanta Citizens Review Board. So unfortunately, we didn't get any responses to that because we've been making that complaint and request information from the chief since last November, December. And now that there have been so many other cases where this has happened, that now the Police Chief Shields is working with the Atlanta Law Department to try to get them to have a penalty of the first time they have a camera and don't have it on, that there is a 16-day suspension without pay, and the second penalty would be termination. So she's working with the Law Department on that, and she also expressed that at the last City Council meeting. So when we get information on that, we will let you know. We also want to make sure all MPUs know that the ACRB is available anytime, any place, for any group of any size to talk about what we do, why we do it, and also to make sure that people know what their rights are. Any questions? Yes, sir. Eric.
Meeting, at our NPU meeting Thursday, it was expressed that you had a couple of meetings, but they weren't publicized. Is there a remedy for that? Because I think that when those meetings are held, that the public needs to know when they are being held so that if they do desire to attend, they can.
I think what you may be referring to is the fact that the ACRB meets on the second Thursday of every month here at City Hall, and once a quarter we meet in the community. But periodically, when we have a large number of cases, instead of reviewing 10 cases at one meeting, we'll break it down where we have 5 cases at 2 meetings. So we'll have an additional meeting. But we do follow city policy, and we do advertise it among the channels that we have to advertise it to the public. And unfortunately, since MPUs meet once a month, that may be between the time that you guys are meeting. And as you know, sometimes we send information, or any organization that sends information, it doesn't necessarily get all the way down the MPU level or to the residents as it should.
And that was part of the discussion, the fact that we were wondering if your organization could plan further out so that the NPUs could be notified regardless of the week or date that they actually meet within the month, so that basically if you were holding a meeting outside of City Hall, that people could attend. In other words, you would give notice prior to 30 days or plan your meeting accordingly so that all NPUs could receive the information.
I will definitely take that back to the staff of the ACRB because that is a valid concern. And I will make sure that Executive Director Lee Reed responds to you on that, because I'm not actually sure what the city policy says. I don't know if it's 2 weeks or 21 days, but whatever it is currently, we do fulfill that obligation. But I will get that information or have him to contact APAB directly.
When you do that, could you also mention that you don't have to follow policy to the strict letter? You can be a little bit avant-garde and apply essential things.
Correct. Like if it says 14 days, we could do 30. I get it. Okay.
Thank you.
That's a valid point. Anyone else?
Mr. Grundler, do you have a question?
Jack Rundler, MPUW. So first of all, I'm very happy that you're working with the police department to get sanctions on officers that don't use their cameras. Second, I'm no lawyer, but if I understand correctly, there's a rule in like lawsuits, something about like spoliation of evidence, where if there was evidence that was destroyed by one of the parties, that the court interprets what that evidence would have been as if it were, against the party that destroyed the evidence. So my question is, does the ACRB have a policy to routinely interpret the lack of body cam recording in favor of the suspect or, against the officer? And if not, I'd suggest that you should.
I think that's above my pay grade. However, if you would put that in an email, I'll be more than happy to talk to you afterwards so that we can capture all of that information and we can respond to you on that. Okay. Does that work? Yeah. Okay, and the second thing that I want to say that's a big concern to citizens that we are trying to figure out how to address is the fact that every uniformed police officer does not wear a body-worn camera. And that creates problems. Also, when Atlanta police officers work extra jobs, they don't have on a body-worn camera. So that can create issues. So the reason why I'm letting you know that is that the Police Chief Shields also said that she is doing everything that she can to try to identify funding so that every officer will have to wear a camera. But right now, there's just not funding for it. Now, every police officer in the zone, all the beat officers in all the zones do have them, but there are some other special operations and some detectives that don't wear them, but issues do arrive, and it would be good if they had one. Any other concerns, questions?
Great, thank you. Great
Thank
report.
you. Mm-hmm.
Glad to have you here. Any other boards representatives? If not, we're going to go back to the beginning of the agenda. And I know that there have been a number of people that have walked in since we did a roll call. So could you raise your hand so that we can capture you? We're still looking for 2 NPUs in order to get a quorum. Gloria, which NPU? Why?
Correct, but that doesn't contribute to quorum. So with Gloria, thank you for being here. We have 12 MPs represented, which does not make quorum.
We're getting close. That's Z. We already
Z is already represented. But thank you for being here. We're excited.
Yes, we're very excited. Okay. Before we get to committee reports, you'll notice on the agenda that we do not have a presentation today. We did invite the new... Sure.
Also, he's not on the list, and I've arrived.
We've addressed that earlier in the meeting. We need to get notification from his NPU chair. There have been 2 attempts via email to get that notification. We're working really hard, but we don't have it yet.
So, seemingly, then the one who is authorized would count towards quorum. That's not correct?
You're the 12th.
I'm the 12th.
We need a 13th to have a quorum.
And my promise to you all is that we meet on Monday. I think Chris felt like this had all been done through Ms. Freeman, and I believe as of November of last year, Ms. Freeman had perfected the record, but nonetheless, I believe all he needs to do is complete a document or a form or something.
Yeah, it's a pretty simple process.
Yeah.
All he needs to do is send an email.
He's very diligent, so I think he felt this was already done and probably is surprised to see the issue.
It might have gotten lost in cyberspace or somewhere, so if you could just resend his email just to confirm it, we'd be good.
We will. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to go back. Presentations. You'll notice that we don't have a presentation this month. We were holding it so that the the new interim assistant director for neighborhood planning units could address us. Unfortunately, she is out of town, but she will be here next month to talk about the reorganization, how her vision and the planning department's vision for how they see this new organization and where it now fits under the commissioner's office. So look for more information next month and an opportunity to meet Ms. LaRue. Let's go to committee reports.
Before we go, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions.
Steve, I'm sorry, I'm not going to acknowledge you this time because it's not in regards to a presentation or to a question. Okay, can we talk afterwards?
Well, this is a clarifying question. The name of the person in planning, and is this planning's reorganization or the NPU's reorganization?
This is planning's or reorganization.
Thank you.
Thank you. Committee reports, and I'm going to start from the bottom going up because last month we weren't able to get everyone on the to speak. So, bylaws. Did you have a report?
I was prepared to make a motion to modify the bylaws in specific on the quorum counts, and that cannot take place.
So we'll do that next month, or next time we have a quorum. Okay, great. Finance, Ann, did you want to? Yeah, because I think there's probably other NPUs that have craziness as well.
Ann Phillips, Chair of NPUZ and Finance Director. There have been some changes. I don't know whether your NPU chairs have discussed all of those changes with you individually or with your NPUs, but the first thing was a couple of weeks ago, the NPU team from planning was transferred directly to the office of Tim King, the commissioner. So they're no longer functioning directly under planning. They're under him, but of course everybody is under him there. Additionally, Leah LaRue, who's been with the city for quite some time, most of you probably have met her. Leah was appointed as the interim assistant director for neighborhood coordination. And Leah sent out an email to all NPUs and to APAB last Sunday night stating that we needed to resubmit our invoices for our 2019 grants. And the reason being that they found that there was some technical glitch in the way they had been doing it for the past, 9 or 10 years, and that invoice they were not under the grant, they were not supposed to be paying directly to individual suppliers. It's a purchasing issue. In other words, when you're spending money, government money, you're really supposed to get three bids on anything that you're spending that money on. My past experience with government was that I had to get bids on anything that was $500 or more. But the cities is a little bit different. And because we were not getting bids for our NPU grants, we were somewhat not in keeping with the city's ordinances on that. So they've made that change that the NPUs and APAB will have to designate a fiscal agent. That fiscal agent must be a nonprofit organization and registered with the City of Atlanta as a vendor. So instead of requesting our individual checks for this vendor or that supplier or whatever, we submit one request, and that check goes to the fiscal agent. And the fiscal agent, in turn, writes checks to our vendors for whatever our grants are. Now, the fun part. With the stipulations, you got to find a fiscal agent. And I started working on this for APAB the other day, as well as for my own NPU. Now, some of you may already be registered with the city as vendors, okay? But I would strongly recommend thinking twice about putting yourself in as your fiscal agent for your NPU. I don't recommend that. You need to find an organization, and it can be one of your community partners that you deal with all the time. And essentially what will happen is, say our grants this year were $4,000. That fiscal agent then you'll do one invoice to be paid to that fiscal agent for $4,000, and then you give your fiscal agent the invoices from the suppliers that you were planning to use for whatever your project was, and immediately have them write those checks and put those in your hands. They're completely out of it at that point. Okay? There were recommendations that some of us are vendors with the city. I don't recommend that. I'm a firm believer in checks and balances, and if you are the chair or an alternate or a delegate with that NPU, that money should not come, to your organization. Find an independent person. I am still working on getting a fiscal agent for APAB, and hopefully I'll have that resolved by Monday. I was able to get one of our partners registered as a vendor, and that was a miracle, okay? So that they would act as our agent. Now, the fun part about this whole thing, ladies and gentlemen, is that Leah gave us to May 24th to resubmit those invoices. Okay? So we had less than 10 days to get this done. But when you're up against it, you just figure out a way to deal with it. And so next year, we'll all know exactly what we need to do. If any of you need to contact me or have any questions and I can be of help to you, I will. But right now, that's where we are. So I'm going to stop now. I see people lining up. So I'm going to stop now and just answer those questions that you have right now.
Terry Ross, MPUT. And having prior experience with fiscal agents, most fiscal agents are willing to do it, but for a fee.
Exactly. And this is another thing. I've had to tell the one that decided to work with me that there is no fee. And see, there's no money in our grants to pay a fiscal agent. That makes it even more difficult. Fortunately, and you think about it, most nonprofits operate through a board, and they would have to get this kind of thing approved through their board. And we only had last week and 2 or 3 days of next week. So it's going to be kind of difficult. And like I said, if I can help any of your NPUs, just have them give me a call. But you need to explain to that fiscal agent that there is no money for this. Only thing they're going to have to do is deposit one check, and once that check clears, write individual checks for the invoices that you give them. Their board may allow them to do that just because they are a community partner. And that's the only thing that I've been able to rely on at this point. Yes, sir.
Richard Rao, NPUB. It occurs to me that every NPU has many branches of local of banks like SunTrust, but not. And I was wondering what your thoughts were about approaching a branch manager as part of their community involvement and asking them if they would serve as this fiscal agent. It might also be a way to start to set up some kind of quasi-account at a bank for the NPU, even though it's technically not really a bank account for the NPU. To put funds in, it's a holding account, kind of privatizes the distribution of money from the city to the hands of an objective third party, as opposed to keeping it in some slush fund inside the city. Just
See,
an idea.
That would necessitate, though, that bank being a registered vendor with the city. Also, excuse me, the banks have certain criteria for bank accounts. You got, number one, you got to either have a social security number or a federal, VIN, federal identification number. So either way, you still would have to have an organization or somebody opening up that account. It can't be just a holding account that the bank does for you, primarily because of the IRS regulations. Trust me, we've gone through some very interesting discussions as to how to go about doing this. I even tried to find a situation where there's somebody that's already certified as a fiscal agent in the city, and then they could just, receive the checks for as many NPUs as they needed to. But here again, there's a fee for doing this, and we don't have money to pay them. That may be a possibility. I haven't looked at churches.
I think the biggest problem was the short time frame.
Exactly.
If we had 6 months till, we probably could have pulled this off.
Mm-hmm.
Jim?
Yes, Jim Martin, MPUD. Two, I guess they're comments, really, not questions, but feel free to address them. First, I think that the third party in this probably has to be a 501c3 because the procurement doesn't involve sales taxes. Mm-hmm. And so if this is not a tax-exempt organization, as the city is, then I don't know that you could do the procurement that we've already done through the city, which did not include taxes, number one. Number two is that I've been at quite a few city council meetings where through legislative action they waive their competitive procurement requirements. In fact, they do so with alarming regularity sometimes for multi-million-dollar contracts. And so it seems to me that the best solution by far to this problem, if not in the short term, at least in the long term, is simply to have legislative action from the City Council waiving the competitive procurement requirements for all of the MPU grants. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, would take care of this issue, which Leah LeBrew herself can't fix by administrative action because it requires legislative action. Mm-hmm. But having done that, or at least doing that on an annual basis, this problem would then vanish.
And I agree with you. We're going to have to come up with a better system. But unfortunately, like I said, that email came out to us at 5:49 p.m. on last Sunday, telling us that we had to May 24th to resubmit our invoices. So they didn't give us very much time on this at all. That part of it, of course, upset me. But you know me, I'm a realist. If I got to deal with it, I put the anger aside and go ahead and deal with it. And as I've been doing this week and discussing it with Debbie, I'm realizing that here's the thing. You mentioned about being a 501c. You don't have to be a 501c. You just got to be a nonprofit agency with your federal identification number and registered with the city. Most of the people that are registered with the city as nonprofit are not necessarily 501c3s. Okay? So then that says to me, you still can make checks payable to the individual vendors if you have a certain, like you say, a certain stipulation as it relates to the grant. So that's one of the things that we probably will talk to her about. But it'll be for next year. Okay?
Let's have Mr.
Okay.
Ross.
I just wanted to share something regarding Richard's comment. Because we've been struggling with this. Terry Ross, MPUT. Mm-hmm. Last month I had a meeting with Kieta Holmes. Help me with this, Daniel, who is the interim director
of planning.
Interim director of planning, and was told that under no certain terms are MPUs allowed to have a bank account.
Right.
So I just wanted to share that.
Well, we have been told that before, and several of the NPUs have bank accounts, and they have had them for years. So if there's a ruling on that and some official ordinance or something, then I will contact her and see if they can get that to me in writing. If they send it to me in writing, I will send it out to all NPUs. But in all my time being a part of APAB, there have been NPUs that had their own bank accounts. And a lot of NPUs are in situations where they get contributions from various vendors, partners, in their areas for a lot of the development and stuff that the NPUs are a part of. So I don't know. I'll check and see if there's some written regulations there, and if they are, then we'll get them.
One question, Ms. Phillips. So generally, all that monies is not paid out. It's paid out at once for all of the proposals. Is that what I'm hearing? They're not staggered over the year as the proposals come in? Well, we just submitted on the 15th of April. Does that mean we too have to resubmit?
Yes, ma'am. All of us had to have our invoices in for the 2019 grant. We had to have the invoices in by the 15th or the 16th of April.
Okay.
And this is the usual and customary process. All of your invoices go in by a certain date.
So I don't want to prolong it. So all we need to do is resubmit the same documents.
You're going to have to resubmit those invoices. No,
Okay.
sorry. You're going to have to submit one invoice for the total amount of your grant application, and that check is to be made payable to your fiscal agent. But you got to make sure your fiscal agent is a vendor with the city already.
Your NPU chairs received instructions, and if there are any, two things. If your invoices were submitted early, then they were already paid, and it's not an issue. But if there are any that were submitted right at the deadline, then those were the ones that were caught, and the NPU chair would be given that information and what they need to do in order to have the invoices paid. So they've got instructions. You might want to check with your chair.
Yeah, you know what? Thank you very much. This year, everything went to Lakewood, so he just kind of delegated everything to me, and I made a call regarding it, and that's when I learned something was afoot that was different, but I did not hear resubmitting of the invoices. Who's the name of the new person again?
I'm going to forward that email to you, and I just found out from Ms. Glover here that she did not receive the correspondence. And now Eric is saying that he did not receive it.
I'll have to go back and look, but I don't believe I did.
So what I will do then is I will forward it to those of you who did not get it, and we need to let Ms. LaRue know that everybody did not get the memo, email.
The fiscal agent has to be the NPU. Who?
It just has to be a city vendor.
A city vendor, so it can be anyone that's a city vendor.
And it needs to be somebody that you trust. So the grant was $4,000. That $4,000 check is going to be made payable to one person. They need to deposit that check, and as soon as it clears, they will write the checks to the vendors that you were going to be using with the original invoices. And so once they write those checks, all $4,000 of those dollars should be gone.
Very good.
Okay.
Okay. I'll get with you and okay.
Go ahead, Eric.
Okay, I have a different approach to this problem, and that is, one, I don't believe that it would be legal for the city to treat one group one way and another group another way, even though they are the same entity. In other words, if you submitted your document by this time, then you are treated this way. If you submitted it by this time, then you're treated this way. Even though the law or the ordinance is stating that this is a blanket restriction or ruling that you have to follow. So it would appear to me that they need to enact this for next year and not try to attempt to penalize people that just didn't have all their ducks in a row early but on time. So I would suggest that we as a group contact the director and let them know either everybody that has received money needs to return it, or anyone that hasn't received their grant needs to receive it based under what we've been doing for how many years? How many years have we been doing this?
2010.
Okay, and so now all of a sudden you're going to, it's just a retroactive that you can go forward, but you should not be able to produce a restriction while something is in progress and people have already received it. That's my humble opinion, and I would probably like to see some attorney address that.
Just, if you don't mind, Richard.
Go ahead.
Let me kind of bring you up to date as to exactly where this process is. We submitted those invoices as requested by April 15th. I had my website vendor to come to my office yesterday because we were going to talk about a few things. And he said, well, Ms. Phillips, I pulled up my account, my vendor account with the City of Atlanta yesterday, and it shows that my invoice has been processed. And he pulled it up on his laptop and showed it to me that it had been, the information had been put in, and it was going to be paid by check. So I called down to Ms. Warner, and I asked her, I said, well, so does that mean that the ones that you had already put in and processed will be paid, and or are we still trying to come up with a fiscal agent in 1 week's time to, so I'm getting a little confused here. Well, how does it work now? Because if his information is in, and this is what Ms. LaRue told me. She said, I processed the invoices, all the invoices that had come in and had been processed. I sent out letters to those NPUs. So essentially, Ms. Warner said, well, Ms. Phillips, I had put in everybody's invoices getting ready for processing, but they came in last week and told me to halt everything. So now you all have to, do what Ms. LaRue has instructed you to do, because I can't release any payments or anything like that. Now, I'm like Eric on this. All right, we've been doing this grant for since, 2010 or 2011. A lot of times you go back and you find that you've been doing things the way they should not be done. But to stop it right in the middle of the final phases and tell people all of a sudden you got to go and find a fiscal agent within a 7 to 10 day period is a bit much. I don't know, Eric, whether it would do any good, but personally I would like to ask the Commissioner's office if for this grant period they would allow us to do it business as usual, and then before the next grant cycle, everyone have identified a fiscal agent and have that information on file with the city, so when the grant process starts up again, we're all covered.
And I would take a different approach. I would respectfully demand that you either demand all monies that have been paid to be returned, or you go forward and pay the short number of people that have not received their monies that met the deadline and meet the criteria, as we have been acting. There are things called retroactive processes, even though it's been all of a sudden discovered. And so, you look at the competency of the previous 10 years and you say, okay, this person just happened to be much more competent, or were they looking for a reason to refuse certain NPUs? Were they, you just all kind of things conjure up in your mind. So, really, in all fairness, this needs to go forward and then produce the document next year that says this is what you have to do.
If I may.
Well, let me say now, excuse me, let me say, no invoices have been paid for the 2019 grant. Everybody's has been stopped. Okay? So you were mentioning those people that have been paid to have them pay it back. No invoices for 2019 have been paid.
Some people have received, I've received payment.
You received?
Eric.
Yeah.
I think what you're saying, we're floundering here. And I think, what you're saying sounds very good to me. I would like you to consider making a resolution that Debbie, with your help, should write a letter to the mayor right now and state your points. Because, in fact, this whole program emerged from the mayor's office in the first place, and I think still resides there, even though it's been delegated out. Because the mayor has the authority to do exactly what Ann's saying. And it could be very short, it could be very clear, and it's on behalf of all the NPUs plus APAB. And why not?
I would go a step further and include the NPU chairs to copy that same letter and submit it.
Okay,
as
yeah.
an NPU.
Get them to join on. But rather than trying to run around the city and get 25 people to sign as a group, I think the first one should come from you guys. And so I would ask that you do that, and I would vote for that.
We don't have motions because we don't have quorum, so this is something we just have to adopt.
So you should just do it by fiat of the executive committee, because I think it's that important.
Okay. Any more comments about this? Because I'm going to shut down this conversation. I'm not sure that we're going to... I agree with Richard. We've kind of...
I'd just like to toss one out there, if I may, which is that I don't know about everybody else's grants, but in the case of mine, at least, the city made a contractual commitment to pay the vendor when they signed the vendor's quote and sent it back to them. And if that is common, then the city's problem in this is sort of broader than just making a lot of trouble for us, because the city is, in fact, failing to honor contractual commitments to a whole bunch of vendors.
With that in mind, if anybody else has any inequities that they would like to express, maybe they should send them to Debbie, and she can cipher through them as being useful or not. Is that okay? Or do you? Is there too much on your plate?
Right now, I've got some personal things that are going to get in the way between now and at least Thursday. But you could send them to me, and maybe you and I can work together and get something to the city. I don't think that we're going to be able to make it by the May 24th deadline. So
I'm thinking that May 24th is Thursday, right? That's not going to give us enough time to try to get a letter and get it to the mayor, get somebody to read it or whatever. I think probably we need to have a meeting. Okay, but see, you just can't do that, because if you just ignore the 24th, and that means that we're in violation of the request, that means you don't get a grant.
Let me jump in right quick.
Let
me jump in right quick.
Come on, guys. We can't solve this issue
No,
now.
This is important, right, and germane to what we're talking about. You can't ignore it, so what you do is you file for an extension. Each NPU chair writes a letter for extension based on a document that we are preparing.
And here's the problem with that. The city's fiscal year ends on June 30th. In order for checks to be paid, they have got to get to, through the process in order to meet that deadline. So we've got a time issue here. We are so compressed for time. We're having some difficulty in getting it done. Yeah, well, that's the reason why they asked for April 15th in the first, because it does take time. I don't know how many invoices are involved with that. Yeah, they need for the checks to clear by June 30th, so that's part of the problem. Yes, sir. Last comment on this issue.
Yes, sir. Chris Brown, NPUS. So hearing the concerns, the first part in terms of the contractual piece, it's almost like we can't willingly violate the procurement process. And one solution in fixing that is to basically find a fiscal agent that will represent the city, or in between, be that medium in between the city and the NPU, so you can all have one fiscal agent. So let's say a group like United Way. So that means all NPUs will use United Way, and they will cut all the checks for the different NPUs, since they have already came through the bidding process and the grant process, and so that would expedite the timing on that, and thus for grant relief to the NPUs for trying to find fiscal agents. So if you would make a recommendation that the city actually helps with that partnership, like a group like United Way, they can send their things through that organization to cut checks. I think you'll have the same resolution that you'll look at the individual MPUs trying to find fiscal agents.
Great, thank you for that comment. Okay, moving up the list of committees, Committee on Council, do you have a report?
Good morning, Terry Ross, MPUT, Chair of Committee on Council. Committee on Council did not convene today because Terry Ross was the only one in attendance. Our next meeting is June 17th at 9 a.m., and there is one resolution that's up for today from the Committee on Council in regards to the Atlanta Community Engagement Playbook being distributed to all 25 MPUs. And that concludes this report.
Mr. Ross, would you have any objections, or would there be any objections from the floor if I sent a letter to the Department of Planning requesting that they disseminate this information without formal resolution from the body?
I would not object to that at all, no.
Is there anyone here that would object to that? If you were here last month, there was a presentation on the playbooks, and we talked about distributing the playbooks and the summaries to the NPUs en masse. And so we just want to get them out in a timely way, because I know that your team wants to begin training at the NPUs on this.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, so I will do that.
Thank you, Debbie. Madam President.
Debbie is fine, thank you. And finally, zoning and land use.
Yes, so we would have met on Monday, but did not meet in part because we had 4 resolutions currently pending before the body, and in part because it was the week of the Atlanta Cycling Festival, and there was all kinds of fun stuff going on. But I would point out that there are 4 resolutions which are in your packet. We're not going to be able to act on them today because we don't have a quorum. However, 2 of them we deferred action on last month so that we could have another month to think about them. So hopefully everyone has done all the thinking they need to do, and we're not going to have a similar incident the next time we have a quorum where people decide they need to do more thinking. So with that said, we have a resolution calling for boilerplate language on zoning conditions that require affordable housing. We have a resolution calling for boilerplate language to protect trees in zoning conditions. We have a resolution calling for cost controls on tax abatements proposed to create affordable housing, and we have a resolution requesting the city to provide us a template for communications with city boards. With that said, if there are any questions about those, comments on those, anyone feels that they need more information on any of those things, please feel free to ask now rather than at the next meeting where we do in fact have a quorum.
Two comments. One is I'd like to draw your attention that I have now numbered these resolutions because I was getting pretty confused myself. So the 2 that Jim is referring to is 19006, which has to do with the use of public money to incentivize affordable housing. And I would recommend that you take this resolution back to your NPUs and have a discussion about that because it's critical. And the other one is 19007, which is creating standards for effectively communicating recommendations to city boards. This has become a major issue for NPUs.
006 and 007 were informational last month, and 003 and 004 were deferred action on last month. Richard?
Yes, Richard Rao, NPUB. Just for your information, yeah, I'm not about to try to stand in the way of pushing this on through, getting it signed and getting in front of somebody because Jim's so, passionate about it and wants to get it off the table. However, it does take a little time to interact with people on this sort of thing. And in the last month, Eric said last month that, maybe we should take a little time and try to find out more about what kinds of appendices to zoning application, what kind of language, what precedents might be for having done this in the past. And I'm in the middle of doing that. I have a meeting next week with the former chair of NPUB, who's an attorney, Andrea Bennett, who has been studying this for about a week after I presented it to her. Obviously, I haven't had time to meet with her yet. And also next week, I have a meeting with Dawn Luke, who's the head of investigative administration at the Atlanta Development Authority, Invest Atlanta, just to see, because this group routinely, when someone comes looking for money and they have to construct some kind of legal scenario by which the city can get what it wants out of a developer who wants to get what it wants, they routinely attach provisions to such things, and just to explore the possibilities for what they have experienced in that. So anyway, I just wanted you to know that was underway. I have nothing really to say at this point, although there have been some interesting discussions about the total concept of affordable housing and, the different scenarios in which that has taken place, all the way back to World War II in New York City, and rent control and that kind of stuff. So I mean, there's just a fairly large topic with a lot of creative energy that's been put into it for 50 years, and we might as well, sample that. So that's not to say that we shouldn't do this resolution. It's an indication of our intent to do something, but if we're actually going to try to do something that has a chance of being in some way implemented, I think we have to go further than the resolution.
Well, and that we will be discussing all four of these at the CDHR and ZLU meetings in June, which will be on the evening of the second Monday in June. And although I can't get my calendar up because the Wi-Fi is down, I believe that's June the 10th at 7 p.m. In Chin Chin Restaurant, 1715 Howell Mill Road in the Kroger Plaza. So anyone interested in this, anyone has new information with regard to this, if you hear back from any of these people you've been talking to before then, by all means, show up, bring the information, bring your opinions, bring your comments, and we will modify drafts as appropriate.
That's it. Great, thank you. I just wanted some brief comments about the executive committee. We met, as we always do, the first Sunday of the month. There was a quorum present, although we did not take any official action. The primary purpose of that meeting is to develop and finalize the agenda for this week's meeting. A couple things came up that might be of interest to you. One was that we had a long discussion regarding the CCI NPU initiative meetings, which I know many of you have been either involved in or are at least aware of. I do have an update from Kyle Kessler, who is not able to be here today. And now I've just lost my update. And I just want to share with you some things that he sent me in an email. This is not to say that APAB or NPUF is endorsing his process, but I do want to make sure that you're aware of this information. One is that they are scheduled to give an update to the Council Community Development Human Services Committee at their next meeting on Tuesday, May 28th at noon. I would recommend that representatives from the NPUs and from APAB attend that meeting to hear that presentation firsthand. CCI, and Steve, forgive me, I always get this wrong. Thank you. Center for Civic Innovation is attending NPU meetings to introduce their initiative. They've already been to NPU C, H, J, L, and P. NPU F and K is lined up for next week, and they're coordinating with others. So expect to hear from them if you haven't already to attend their meetings, and that they are going to begin to send out a newsletter, the first of many, next week. Any questions about the CCI initiative? I don't have a lot of information, but those are the things I wanted to be sure that you were aware of. I also wanted to share with you, hang on for a second, Ms. Hawkins, Jim Schneider, who is a former APAB president and represented NPUE for a very long time, has left the city of Atlanta and moved to Arizona to live in assisted living near his family. We do have an address for him if any of you are interested in communicating with him and sending some well wishes. We're certainly going to miss Jim's expertise in the city. He's got a lot of background that many of us haven't even been in the city long enough to know.
Briefly, I spoke with him on the phone in Arizona. He's bedridden because of the toxicity of what happened to him at Grady. When he left Grady, he went straight to Arizona. He's in rehab, and he's still himself. When you talk to him, he's still very interested in what's going on in the city of Atlanta. And he seems like he's on the road to recovery, whatever that means at his age.
Thank you. You need to come to the mic, otherwise we can't hear the question. I don't.
Are you talking about the CDHS agenda? Well, I mean, the council committee's agenda is available online, so you can download that off the city council's webpage. I don't know that CCI has publicized the contents of their presentation. Is that what you want? I would suggest reaching out directly to Kyle Kessler for that.
Okay, guys, you're breaking my rule. You got to come to the podium to speak. Okay. The other thing I want to mention is that we do move executive committee meetings around the city, where we attempt to move them, and the next meeting is going to be held at De Palma's Porch, which is a barbecue place. We meet on the first Sunday of the month from 4 until about 6 o'clock. And it's generally an informal discussion. As I said, we don't, except for finalizing the agenda, very rarely take any kind of formal action. So,
the address of the Palmer's Porch?
It is 1201 Collier Road, and that address is also on the agenda under upcoming meetings. Did I miss any committees? Okay. Jennifer is not here, so I skipped over that. Are there any NPU announcements?
Madam Chair, I'd like to make a suggestion because this is so great that you actually attached a format and a number to the resolutions. I would like to suggest that all resolutions be tracked by the Secretary and assign numbers similar to what you have here, if that's okay. If not, that's fine. But I think that makes it very simple.
It makes it a lot easier for me.
For everyone.
And for Melissa to keep track of them, and that way we can keep them on the website whenever we can update the website.
And so hopefully we can, well, I don't even think we need to vote on that. We probably just need to agree to do it. That when a resolution comes forward, that they contact Melissa by way of email requesting the next number up. Is that?
We actually have a resolution to number all resolutions, and I will definitely be doing that going forward. We're having a little trouble finding old resolutions. So if your committees have process resolutions, please email the signed copy, presidentially signed copy, to know that we have it and we can number it and add it to our storage. Happy to do so.
It's based on that we may not capture all. Is there a way to designate going forward as opposed to resolutions of the past?
Yeah, we can do that by year.
Yep,
Yeah,
definitely.
Well,
we'll
actually, there's some within this year, so it would have to
yeah.
be something like a A or a B or something.
Well, that's the reason why it started with 003 this week.
Yeah, we passed two resolutions last month, as you probably recall. I imagine those are 1 and 2, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
will be.
There's a 5 somewhere?
5 was the Atlanta Community Engagement Playbook, which we decided that we would not vote on as a resolution. We would just act on it.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, there's 5 right there.
Okay. Any NPU announcements? Anything going on in the NPUs that you want to share?
I would like to share, I guess it's not really just NPUD, but several NPUs. We do have Streets Alive coming up on the big Crosstown route, which I believe is June the 9th, although, again, I can't get my calendar up because we don't have Wi-Fi, in the afternoon, and that is going to be along Howell Mill Road, starting at the intersection with Chattahoochee, going down Howell Mill to Marietta Street, going along Marietta Street, Decatur, DeKalb, and I believe on Howard you can get all the way over to Decatur. It's a 10-mile-long route, the longest route in the history of Streets Alive. Should be lots of fun.
Any other NPU announcements? Yeah. Ms. Williams.
Hi. In my role with Georgia Stand Up, I work on transit equity initiatives. And one of the things that NPUK is working on is the Martin Luther King Jr. Drive median project and the issues that they have with that. Chair Glover was at the last task force meeting, and unfortunately the city sent people there that were not decision makers. And the meeting was at the C.T. Martin Rec Center. I think there were about 75 residents there, very informed about what has gone on over the years. They are dissatisfied with the median not allowing access for them to make left-hand turns. And also, if you're eastbound on Martin Luther King Jr. Drive going toward downtown, you cannot make a left into the Scott Rec Center. So the bottom line seems to be that because they have federal funds for that project and the fact that they never really met with that corridor of residents between the I-20 bridge and Northside Drive, that they have to finish the project and then they can go back and try to make tweak it and make changes to it, which would cost millions of dollars. But the residents are meeting monthly with DPW to express their dissatisfaction with the way the whole project has gone on over the past few years with lack of community engagement. And I have an announcement in the other group too.
Go ahead.
This is a public announcement. I'm not sure how Fulton County communicates this, but I went last year. This May is Senior Month. And every year Fulton County has a day at all 4 of their multi-purpose centers. So that's the Bowden Center, the Darnell Center, Helene Mills, and I'm not sure what the name of the center is in Sandy Springs. Anybody know the name of it, the multi-purpose center? But anyway, at all at all 4 of those multi-purpose centers, on May 30th, they're going to hold a senior information day, and it is extremely informative. And they, one of the things they do is tell seniors about their Starlight program, which allows caregivers and people that need to be cared for. They let them know what the county offers. There are a lot of services that people don't know about. Also, the county has a grant, and seniors who can get an Uber ride for $1 each way. But the Uber ride has to be set up through Fulton County in order for them to get that. It's about, I think it starts at 9 o'clock in the morning and it's over at 3. They provide a hot breakfast, and they also have a very good lunch, and it's all free. So that is on May 30th, which is on a Friday, I think. I don't. But anyway, it's and you have to go online and register for it. And typically, it does fill up pretty quickly because normally about 300 or 400 people attend each one of these, and it's very informative. Thank you.
May 30th is on a Thursday.
So it's May 30th, Thursday, May 30th. Thank you.
Well, good morning. My name is Khan Maywan, and I'm currently serving for NPT as an alternative delegate. I'm here just to make an announcement that upcoming next week I will be meeting with Commander Celeste Murphy from Zone 4 to discuss a Zone 4 Public Safety Forum through NPUT, and I am planning to reach out to other NPUTs through Zone 4 to perhaps work together in making this successful and introducing Commander Murphy to our community. That is all of my announcement. Thank you.
Thank you, and welcome. Any other announcements? Any other public comments? Any other business to come before APAB today?
Motion to adjourn? We can't make a motion because we don't have a quorum. So,
second. Since we can't vote on it, if there's no other business to come before the NPU, I'll declare this. Steve, if you were listening, you would have heard public comment.
Too late. We're already adjourned.
We're adjourned, actually.
But we'll listen to you, Steve.
Well, thank you. We have several issues that are reoccurring and reoccurring and reoccurring and reoccurring. One of them is quorum. We can drop the quorum, of course. We can use the numbers. We can even drop it to 1. Or anybody who has any suggestions, appreciate them getting them to either Kyle Kessler or somebody else. Myself, and I'm regularly in telephonic contact with Kyle or Eric, and go to the NPUs, particularly the chairs. It is their job to facilitate people being here, official or unofficial. They are not doing their jobs if they cannot get people here from their own NPU. If whoever is selected from each of the NPUs and doesn't come, they need to find somebody else to take their place. The old adage of you either lead, follow, or get out of the way. It's the same thing. We should not be stuck on procedure as far as who has been, quote, officially, unquote, designated to be here. We have a process that's in the Code of Ordinances and the Charter. We need to make it work.
We also have a bylaw that requires NPU chairs to designate their delegates. So
I agree to that, too. A while back, I ran for a vice presidential slot with this organization. I was not elected. The only reason I ran is because of one little line in the bylaws. It said, for the proper functioning of the committees. The committees are not properly functioned. This group is not properly functioned. It's got great aspirations. It's always had great aspirations. But there are missing pieces. So any and all ideas, if we get 1,000 ideas and we only get 1%, that's still 10 good ideas. And I would suggest that this group reach out to all of the NPU chairs, past NPU chairs, all delegates present and past, and anybody and everybody, including people that may be even watching and or listening to this program on television. We got a process that I'd like to see work.
we're working on it.
I know we are. We've been working on it for 44 years.
I would like to make it known in advance. I probably should have done this previously. In order to change the bylaws, we have to have a 2/3 vote. We have not had 2/3 attendance since I've been a member. That may be a problem.
Eric, I don't have my bylaws out because I just put my bag away. Is that 2/3 of all MPUs or 2/3 of voting members present at the meeting?
2/3 of the membership.
The entire membership?
Yeah. to change the bylaws. And that's in the bylaws.
Well, let's do some, excuse me, some research on that and see if we can do some problem solving. Anything else, Steve?
Thank you. Now you can use the A word.
The A word was used. We are adjourned, but because we're still on camera, if there's anyone else that has any public comments, feel free to come to the...
Jack Rundler, MPUW. Are there any APAB officers whose job description it is to try to whip up people to come to meetings? Yes, my question was, are any of the APAB officers' job descriptions, do those include the
I was just getting ready to look at it.
responsibility to try to whip up people to showing up to the meetings?
It is not specifically mentioned in the bylaws, the job descriptions. In fact, the descriptions of the officers' jobs are pretty lightweight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've kind of feel like it might be implied. I'm trying to remember the actual text. I don't have it on hand, but I feel like if you look, it might be implied in either maybe the first or second vice president role.
I don't think so. I was first vice president, and I don't remember that as being a responsibility. There is a shared responsibility for the functioning of the committees. So, yeah, we've got a lot of work that we need to do. We know that we've got a lot of work that needs to get done. Mm-hmm. We also know that we've been sort of working with one hand tied behind our back because of the transition in planning department. Mm-hmm. We've got a brand new interim assistant director that's very enthusiastic. I'm anxious to be able to work with her and explore ways that we can improve APAB involvement and NPU involvement and strengthen the leadership skills of the NPUs themselves. So, yeah.
Jack, I believe probably you're referring to number 3 under first vice president, and it says to be a contact liaison for NPUs, and I think that's what you were saying. There's a loosely implied.
Okay, cool.
And I'm sorry. And by the way, it was clarified. It is 2/3 present vote to change the bylaws. I stand corrected.
I used to write job descriptions in my real life, and so I think these job descriptions could use a lot of work. Anybody else? Okay, we're done. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
And I said, yes, ma'am. What else are you going to say? And so we went in, council meeting began, went through the committees, got to the public safety report, and I was able to pull the legislation up to the surprise and to the chagrin of many other council members.